back for another 5-minute Bible study. Can you stick with me for 5 minutes? Okay, good. I just want to let you know, Pastor did it flat foot with no notes out there. I'm going to be back here, if that's okay. All right. So we're going to go to Psalms 127, verse 5, and we're going to read this out of the New American Standard Bible. And this is what it says. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. The topic for this 5-minute Bible study is, let's go there, please, God's gift of victory. God's gift of victory. Now, Psalms 127, just for some context, is really known as the family psalm. Now, they thought it was written by David to Solomon, or either Solomon wrote it as an honoring his dad of something that he told him. We are probably more familiar with this scripture starting from verse 3, where it says, children are a gift from God. Now, we say that a lot, but do we understand what that truly means? Do we understand what a gift from God means? And we need to consider two questions. What is this gift for? If children are a gift, what is this gift for? And then what is our responsibility with that gift? What is a gift? Well, one of the Bible scholars said it like this. He said, children are to us what God wants them to be, what God makes them. For some, they are comfort, and for others, they will be a cross. But either way, God ordained it for us to have victory. Children are indeed different, having a lot of different points of view in the world. Some are such difference it can seem like contention. There's an opportunity that we have to look at and say, the differences in the way that they think, is that bad? Or is it just different? Is it different than the way that we think about something? For a while, at times, these children can seem, my children, your children, our children, if we're being honest, can seem a little burdensome. And no, we don't really say that a lot, but there is a weight that comes with whether they're yours or you're just invested in them. They can seem very burdensome at times. But oftentimes we don't consider the job set before them. As the scripture said, to contend with the enemies at the gate. So while they are heavy to us, they also carry a weight that we may not all the way understand. And this enemy is not one, when we say that they defeat the enemies at the gate, they contend with the enemies at the gate, they speak to the enemies at the gate. I want to be clear. When they wrote this, it wasn't like, hey, we won this battle, now you go out and win this battle. The enemies that they're contending with at the gate are the ones that we lost to. And they're coming back to beat us again. And that's who they are contending with. It's the ones that cause us to put the mask when we go to church. It's the ones that put us in our hiding places and we have to pretend that we're somebody else. It's the enemy that mocks us relentlessly. Truly, it is our Goliath that they are contending with. And God challenged me on a thought of this. He said, and I want to challenge you with the same thing. If they are to contend with our Goliath, why is it that we get so irritated when they tell us that the armor doesn't fit? That this sword is too heavy. I can't do it like you did it, Mom. I can't do it like you did it, Dad. Can I get these 3 smooth stones and let me kill the Goliath that defeated you the way that God has called me to do it? So then you have to ask, if that is what they are supposed to do, then what is my responsibility? What is my responsibility? And I want to go to the same Psalms 127, and we're going to read it out of the Passage translation. And it says, happy will be the couple who has many of them, speaking of children, A household full of children will not bring shame on your name, but victory when you face your enemies. For your offspring will have influence, say influence, and honor to prevail on your behalf. They will have influence and honor to prevail on your behalf. So when you think about what our responsibility is with the young people, it speaks to this scripture there's a perception that or implied thought that number one, they are truly a gift from God, but that gift has to be treated and trained with honor. They have to be treated and trained with honor. Treat them with honor, for they have been called to do something that we may not have been able to accomplish. Train them to war, but be humble enough to recognize that they may have a key that unlocks a victory that we all need. So as we begin tonight, let's all have open ears, open minds, and open hearts to hear what these precious gifts may teach us on our way to the ordained victory God has for this house. Amen? All right. You ready for the panel introduction? I want you all to really, we talk about concerts, we talk about sports, okay, here we go. Let me introduce to you the panel for this evening. Please join me in welcoming, now, I had to, Brother Kenneth Rodriguez, Sister Eliza Bedford, Sister Audra Wicks, Sister Hannah Jaime, and last but not least, Sister Saya Jeffries. Without further ado, let's get started. He's gonna try to ask everybody to move. He said, I am the lone man up here. All right, so let's get started. You all ready to get started? Are you all ready to get started? Okay. You can see that we have the question and answer slide, Q&A on the slide again. We will be doing Q&A at the end of each section this time because we got some feedback. Get to the questions. Get to the questions. So we will get to the questions. All right. Before we get started, though, can we give a hand to the adults that were here and the young adults that were here on Wednesday? They did a fantastic job, and I'd like to kind of start tonight by asking, as you listen to what they were saying, can you tell me a little bit about what you learned from what they said before we even get started into the themes and all the other things? Anybody want to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I really liked when I forgot who said it, but they were talking about the why of why we do what we do in ministry. Stood out to me, and hopefully we get to talk about that more today.
Yeah, I really liked how the idea of maturity and highlighting why it takes so long to come into a position of leading, and the wisdom and intention behind building us up in the right way. Yeah. I really like that.
So on Wednesday, the first time I heard it we talked about mirror ministry, which Sister Ronaldo and Sister Nicole really spoke on it, and I think that it's really important to think about that because when you're beginning ministry, the first thing you have to do is look inward before you look outward, because like Sister Ronaldo was saying, it's really easy to nitpick all the wrongs of other people before you look at yourself, and so self-reflection was what I got from that.
Okay.
Mine was the forgiveness and just the weight that you carry from not forgiving yourself, that you can bring so much worry and shame, which just then separates you from the very same community that will help you get out of that forgiveness. Yeah. And so really trying to have healthy communications with people to make sure that you're forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
For me, I think it was when Sister Nicole was talking about leading and how the boys and the girls and how you don't have to be pressured, but it's availability and to choose if you want to lead or not. Because availability, but it's again,
That's good. So she was talking about the availability and whether or not, like, being in position to lead and how you decide to do that, right? That's what you're talking about?
yeah. So I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
See, that's why I'm the youth pastor, because I can get it. I can get it. All right. Well, then, listen. Again, I want to thank the Wednesday night panel. They did a fantastic job. Now it's your turn to talk and have real talk and real conversations about the things that are affecting not just youth in this house, because I want to bring it broader. I want us to look at you all as a whole, the ministry, not this ministry specifically, but the church body as a whole, because I think there are a lot of things that we deal with that we're trying to understand what your perspective is. So can you share that with us tonight? Is that good? All right, so let's begin by talking. The first theme will be identity, expectations, and leadership. Remember, many of you feel called to serve, but also feel like there are kind of like parameters around that serving that you don't quite understand and you're trying to get it. And so let's explore how we break through those barriers to make real and imperfect growth in the area. And so the first question, and listen, I gave the first question really hard for the adults. I'm gonna do the same thing for the young adults and the youth, okay? How do you see imperfections of leadership outside and inside of church and still want to be active in what God is doing in ministry?
Oh, sorry. I think the first thing I ask myself is like, well, who are you to be mad at this person? Or who are you to highlight someone else's imperfections? And then the second thing I have to ask myself or tell myself is that, like, nobody's perfect. No church is perfect. And so am I just going to pick up and leave and go and try and find somewhere that's perfect? Like, that's not going to happen. So I'm not saying that I, like, accept the imperfections. I'm like, well, it is what it is. But I am saying that, as Christians, we're supposed to forgive and kind of just roll with the punches. And, like, you're not perfect, but that's okay. Neither am I. We're going to grow in our imperfections together. Because at the end of the day, I still want to serve the Lord, and I'm not going to stop doing that just because someone offended me or vice versa,
Good, good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I like that last part that Saya said, was still wanting to serve the Lord, like really thinking about the intention behind why you're ministering. And is it because someone's in a leadership role that you like or you don't like, or is it because you want God to use you as a vessel to minister? So understanding the why behind it.
Good.
Yeah, moving out of yourself and your flesh and how you might feel about things, and just stepping back and looking at the fruit too of the house is really important too, to see that, like, something's working and something is being done. And so it's not always going to be done perfectly, and only the Lord knows people's hearts. So yeah.
Good. I think one of the things that we see a lot in young people today is this concept of, I get to a certain age and I leave my church because I've outgrown it, or I feel like, they treat me as a kid in church and I'm grown now, and so I need to go out and explore my young adult nature, so I go find another church. What do you think about that, and how should we make young adults feel comfortable where they are so that they can stay? Any thoughts on that?
I think it starts with intention. I think that growing up, we saw the age ranges from youth to adult. It was a lot more. There was a lot more variety, if we're being honest. And so I think that over time, now there is, the babies, and there's the youth, and then there's the people with like 4 and 5 kids teetering on grandkids. And that's a difficult divide, and that's okay because we love each other. But when you're crossing that divide, I think there has to be intentionality. So with intentionality comes getting to know the youth on that individual basis, getting to see the things that they're good at. You might want, someone to be on stage and sing, but who's to say that God isn't calling them to the projection or to be like a musician or something like that. So I think getting to know the youth on an individual basis will show them that, hey, I want to bridge that divide. I want to get to know you so that you can grow up in the church and not just be thrown across that divide and go from, hybrid to being on stage and talking in the pulpit, So it's creating that comfortability with intention.
I also think that community is probably the biggest thing, creating a safe space for youth, like if they leave the church, to feel comfortable to come back to. Because I feel like when I talk to some people, or like I know of some people that have left the church, I know that a big reason they don't come back is because they feel like they're going to be judged, or they feel like no one's going to forgive them for what they've done. And they're not even able to focus on like fixing their own relationship with Jesus because they're so worried about being hurt by the people in the church. And so I know, like, for me, I love coming back here because everyone greets me with a smile. They're like, oh, hey, Sai, and I'm like, hey. And but at the same time, like, for other people, they don't have that experience. And they feel like, man, like, people know what I've done. They've seen the things I've done, and I don't feel safe to go back. So creating a safe space and not making that person feel judged, but making them feel loved and saying, I know what you did, but it's okay, I still love you. I think that would change a lot.
So speaking of that, right, because we were talking about kind of making a safe space, sometimes when people come back, they may not feel safe and they feel like they have to wear a mask when they come to church and pretend to be something. I think we've heard this time and time again. I think Ariella did a great job with her spoken word where we talk about like, hey, I'm this way in church on Sunday, but on Friday and Saturday or Monday through Saturday, I'm another way. And so I've learned over the years to wear this mask. Help us understand, like, what type of people help you overcome this church mask identity issue, allowing you to be a very authentic version of yourself?
I think it's that same place that you're speaking from, that judgment versus curiosity and understanding. A lot of times, like, I'll use a metaphor, for example. Growing up in the church, you have like specific days that you wear specific clothes, like Sundays. First Sunday's black. Back then it used to be navy too. And then you had bright colors on the second Sunday, ranch Sunday. So you kind of had like a uniform of what to wear. And so one day my mom was like, you can pick out your own clothes. And I was like, yes. So then I looked into like my closet and I picked out what I wanted to wear for that like Wednesday or Friday. And I came to church. Now there's two sides of the coin. On one hand, someone could have approached me and said, what are you wearing? That does not match. That looks crazy and all this stuff. And so that's coming from a place of judgment versus someone could have came to me and said, I'm glad you're here at church today. Wow, like, how are you doing? And then we could get to talking and they're like, I'm curious, like, this is a new outfit, right? I'm like, yeah, like I did it myself. And so then that kind of bridges that community of like making me feel comfortable that that person's coming from a sense of curiosity and understanding and not necessarily judgment. So I think the same can go for like the church mask and identity. Like I could feel more comfortable sharing like what I'm going through and like just being myself with those people who make me feel comfortable, coming from a sense of curiosity, understanding compared to judgment.
Good. All right, so it is now time to go to our Q&A, and we have our UG squared, UG squared lead up here, and she will be giving us, let's go with 2 questions.
Awesome. First question, how can you balance your time when it comes to your life outside of church and ministry?
Yeah, tying that back to the identity aspect of the last question, also growing up in the church, you're raised up to do a certain thing like depending on your ministry, and it's right. And when you're doing that so consistently, it's hard to keep yourself grounded in the reason for doing those things, and not just it being this form of routine. And so, bridging that with time, something that's helped me, or yeah, at least for me, is coming out of the like Kenny, the worship leader, is Kenny, child of God, right? Is going back to the gospel and being rooted in that, in spare time, and right in remembrance of why you're doing these things. And so I would just say, running to Scripture, like sometime throughout the week or throughout the day, is helpful for maintaining the proper identity and the proper spirit for what you're doing in ministry.
Yeah, I like that, because you're really talking. Got a good clap back there. You're really talking about the difference between doing something and being something, right? And what you do inside the church is not necessarily who you are all the time, but you're talking about grounding yourself in who God is, and that's whether you're inside or outside the church, you're trying to balance that. Any other thoughts on that, on the balancing portion of it?
Yes, I like that last part that you said. Well, at least for me, juggling like grad school and doing my internship at the same time and working a full-time job, like a lot, it was very busy for me. And it was very, hard to be involved in the church and involved in ministry. And it was something that co-pastor said one day, where she was like, "Are you making God a priority in your schedule?" I said, "Ooh, okay. What's my schedule look like?" And so it's going back to like your schedule and like making sure that, okay, if you can't be involved in ministry, like those 2 hours that you would have been in practice flowing through, I'll just keep it at that, in practice, what are you going to do to serve God? Like, how else are you going to move those 2 hours around within your schedule to give back to God? And so I think it goes back to, like, not necessarily what you do in the church, but who you are in Christ.
Oh, good. All right. Do we have a second question?
Yes, sir. What do you feel most adults, quote unquote, miss when you guys are trying to do something different in the ministry?
Okay. Now, I don't think adults miss it. I just think, obviously, sometimes there's miscommunication or misunderstanding. I think sometimes the notion is that we don't like things the way they are, and we want them to be our way, like the youth's way or the highway, and that's not the case. Obviously, we love our church, and we just see sometimes things from a different perspective. We're a different generation. We see things that, like, this is what we've always done, but the youth of today, like, it doesn't appeal to them, or this is not how you're going to reach them. So we're like, maybe we could try this. And so I think that maybe if, like, when we're communicating with each other, we could try seeing it from a perspective of, well, you know what, I didn't think of it like that, instead of thinking you don't like things the way they are, kind of thing. Did that make sense?
Anything else? I thought that was good. All right, good job. Okay, so let's move on to theme 2, and let's talk about worship and culture. Some teens today feel like church is more of a performance or tradition than true connection. And the reason why I think that these kind of questions are important is because I don't want anyone to think that we are putting this posture on you all. But the 5,000 that we're trying to bring in, you all have to be prepared to minister to people that feel these types of ways. And so I'll ask this kind of question, and let's see what you think. What type of just Christian traditions prevent you from expressing your faith authentically? I told you it wouldn't be easy. Now if this was youth fire, they'd be like, da 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 da. I can see them kind of thinking through their head, like, no, not that one, not that one, not that one.
Go ahead and repeat that question.
Okay, here we go. What type of Christian traditions do you feel like prevent, whether it's you or just people your age, from expressing your faith authentically in church?
Well, I think that's something that newcomers coming into here could be intimidated by is the super tight-knit community that we have here, which is like fantastic. But I mean, but coming in can be intimidating and feeling like there's no place for them in this weave that we have going on. And so I would just say something that could be further encouraged is more of a warming welcome. Not that I'm saying that we don't already try to do that or aren't doing that right now, but just figuring out ways that we could could expand on that idea and make that a focus for newcomers who are coming in.
Good. Anything else?
I think that goes kind of tying into the community aspect. At least for me, I come to church, I go home. And so I'm at fault too of not creating a welcoming space for newcomers to come in and feel like they're being seen, And so I think going back to what you said, maybe after church having this sense of community, or maybe having a small event that you could just pop in and go to kind of build that community so it doesn't feel so tight-knit.
Good. All right, so I'm going to ask another, almost the same question in a different way, and let's see what we get, okay? Some youth want to be respectful, but find it hard to challenge church traditions. They feel that may be outdated, or they decided to leave the church. What are the traditions that youth want to challenge but are afraid to speak up?
All right, y'all got it.
I will say with a lot of the traditions, I think a lot of it comes from the lack of understanding the reason why we do it. And so growing up, a lot of times, going back to the wardrobe, I would see a pair of pants that I would want to wear, and I would be like, oh, that's a cute pair of pants I want to wear at church, but we can't wear pants at church. But I don't think I've ever asked the question of why. I just said, okay, we can't wear pants at church. And so I think a lot of it comes from the lack of asking questions and understanding the reasons why we do what we do.
I like that thought about yes. Because I think a lot of times we have, whether openly or kind of not on purpose, but we've done this, is if you ask a question, it seems to be disrespectful, right? Instead of coming from a helping to understand. And the problem with that is when you invite someone to church, right? Or you go to somewhere else and they say, hey, don't wear that, wear this. And not that you're trying to do anything else, but they may ask why. And so you need to understand kind of what is it. And those things are important. So I want to make sure that we have a space where we can answer those kind of questions. And are there any other things that you kind of question or people have questioned when you bring them in?
To kind of push off what Eliza said, I was thinking about modesty and how it's you want to dress up for church, but then you also want to be comfortable. So I've always respected the rule of having modesty at the church, but then there's times where I'm man, I want to dress up cute, but I also want to be comfortable. I don't really want to look cute at church, but I do. It's like, hello? And then, basically, and I was thinking about it, like, is there really a rule in the Bible that says you have to wear a skirt, or you have to as dressed up all fancy? And I get that some women or men in this church may like the dressing up, getting all cute and everything and stylish, and I get that. But then there's guys who are like, yeah, I'm in more of a casual mood today. And so I think that's pretty much, just modesty and how you can, kind of change it up a little bit.
Yeah. And I like I like the question. I like the question because what it shows me as a youth pastor is there are gaps of our teaching when we're trying to get the deeper things of God. I'm trying to train, let's go to the Bible, let's do this and let's do that, and this is what Job said, and all of these things, when you just want to know, like, why? Like, help me understand this. What is the rule? Why does this matter? And so I think that there are definitely opportunities for, as a youth ministry, and I'm talking to all the youth leaders, for us to kind of slow down a little bit and really begin to say, here are the simple things that you need to understand, and why the house does what it does versus another house that does what it does. And it's just house rules, right? And so I think Hannah, I appreciate that. I think that's a really, really good point. Anything else? Or y'all said that's enough? All right. So, this is Natalia. We're coming back.
Yes, this is great.
Let's go two first, and then we'll see what else we have from there.
Yes, sir. All right. If young people leave a church because it lacks the community they want, what stops them from creating that kind of community themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Being out, I've realized, or I've gotten to witness this idea of home church, of your own church, of youth feeling like as long as they're reading their Bible every day and they're praying, doing whatever they think or is most obvious or most put out there that a Christian should do, then that's enough. But not realizing that community is a really important part of that. I think of Paul when he's addressing all of the different churches, and he's in Ephesus, and highlighting their growth in community and faith and being rooted in the gospel, and that just being something that we should highlight a little bit more when catering to the new believer or somebody who is new to the walk.
So let me ask this then, because I want to get to the kind of the point of that question, because I think you answered it well, and I want to bring it deeper a little bit. Why then, why do youth leave a church when they could actually start whatever they're missing in that church?
I think that could go back to how we're still seen as youth sometimes and not young adults. So then when youth leave and go to another church, they can kind of rebrand themselves as an adult or as a young adult. And then their thoughts and opinions are maybe taken more seriously from an adult standpoint than from a youth standpoint. I will say now I very much do appreciate seeing people like Alex leading and people like Natalia up there leading these communities or these ministries. Where growing up, I didn't see that a lot, where the youth were leading, because I think that back then I would see that my opinion was maybe not going to, or my idea was maybe not going to be taken far. Mm-hmm. So maybe I could go to a different church, rebrand, come out as an adult, a young adult, and my opinion will be taken seriously. So maybe I think that's where some of the gap is.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on that? All right. We got time for one more question, Q&A in this section.
What type of church ministry would you like to see in 5 to 10 years? And how do you plan to be effective in that ministry?
So I'll answer again. I just graduated with my master's in counseling, and so thank you. But I do think that, like, in the next 5 to 10 years, I definitely would like to see, like, maybe a youth support group or maybe a young adult support group where it's like one day each month where we just come and we talk about our anxiety or we talk about our depression, our worries from a Christian standpoint in the house, you know? And so that's something that I would want to see in the next 5, 10 years.
Oh. Anything else? What else would you like to see? So I just want to be clear with everyone that's watching. There is such a thing as a holy hush where in Youth Fire, I will just stare at them until we get them to say what they want to say, until they know that it is a safe space for them to speak. They are not lacking of any ideas. But I think that the thing about this panel is that you all are really engaged in the things that you're doing, and you are leading in new and profound ways, kind of like Eliza said. So, you know, if we take it off of you and we think about just what other ministries do you think young people need, what other things do you think that maybe young people would need or would gravitate to?
I think a youth-led, like more of a youth-led, like Youth Fire, where it's more so just like, it's more focused on like the teens or the young adults that are there. I think sometimes while we love the stare that you give us, PT, I love it personally. That's why I always sit next to you. I love to be stared down. So I think that, but more of a youth-led Youth Fire to where we could come in and we could talk about the things that Eliza's talking about, because there are many stresses and mental strains that we all go through that might be difficult to communicate to an older adult who has like kids and a full-time job. And so I think just a group, like a support group that is Bible-focused, where we can dive deep into the Word in a way that we, as, you know, young adults can understand. Something that transitions, you know, from, you know, being a baby to being a tween to being a young adult to being an adult. So.
Good. I think I just asked a question that got me fired. I don't know.
No, you're not fired. You're not fired.
We love you, but. We love you, but. Okay. If you see me in Pastor's office after this, you know. It's been great, Tremaine. Thank you. All right. So I think something that you all, and we're going to go to theme number 3. And this theme is really about life balance, pressure, and mental health. And that's something that you all have been really talking about. And so I want to talk about something that we don't always say out loud in ministry, and that is that ministry can be hard. Walking this life can be overwhelming. So I want to step out and talk about some of the pressure and how you care for your whole selves from a spirit, mind, and body perspective. And so my first question is, what does stress and emotional fatigue look like, or how does it manifest itself in young people today?
I think a lot of it comes in the form of breakdowns. Sometimes, you know, we don't feel comfortable talking to anyone, or we don't have anyone to talk to, so we kind of hide everything, and then at once, you're crying over something small, but really you're crying over something much bigger. And I think that, you know, that happens when you're trying to balance everything. Like when you're in school and when you're like, oh, I have to be in church, like people need to see my face, or you have to do all these extracurricular things that you're doing because life is real. Like, I mean, you can't just, as much as I'd love to just live at the church 24/7, You can't. Like, life is real. We're growing up. We're becoming adults. And so I think just that can take a toll on a person. And when people don't understand that, it's even bigger because you're like, why don't you get it? People are staring at you and they're like, why aren't you in church? Or why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You're like, do you know what's going on? So, yeah.
Let me ask again. So, are there any other ways that you see? She talked about kind of like the emotional breakdown. What else kind of happens when young people get stressed out about certain things?
I think it manifests and it can come out physically in like annoyance and irritation with leadership or just with anyone that you're serving with. But also, unfortunately, it can really dim that fire that you have as a youth that you're meant to have, and it can stunt your growth in ministry. And so instead of, going out and leading and asking for more opportunity, you're just like, okay, well, I'll just do what you tell me to do, and I'll go on stage and I'll say the prayer and I'll put a smile on my face. But the minute that I step off of stage, I'm left with this stunted growth. I'm not really growing as a youth. I'm not growing in Christ. And so when people don't understand what you're going through, they snuff out that light and then they stop you from growing. And that manifests in ministry.
So then let me kind of keep on pulling on that thread a little bit. How can we as a church body help you balance all the things that you have to go into school and all the other things outside of church, plus make sure church is a priority, all that? How can we help you balance that?
I think when it comes to that part, really us communicating with our ministry leaders and letting them know, like, this is what my schedule looks like. This is what I have laid out. Like, me saying no isn't me saying no because I don't want to do it. It's saying no because this is what it looks like right now. And in this season, I cannot commit to doing it. But next season, I got you. Like, this is what it looks like next season. And then that, like, personal accountability as well of, like, okay, well, you said next season you good, so I'm going to see you next season. And so, like, respecting and acknowledging that no isn't necessarily coming from a place of, like, I don't want to do it. It's coming from, hey, I got a lot on my plate right now, and I don't know if I can commit to it.
So can I challenge that? A lot of times we look at ministry as the ark. And whenever things pull you outside, more times than not, you don't come back in. Not you, but I'm just saying people, right? So I have heard, hey, I'll be right back. And it's like, come back. And they never come back. Like, they're gone, right? Because then they learn different priorities. They learn all these other things. And so as a leader, I'm trying to balance making sure I understand what you're saying as far as, hey, you may actually have some other things you have to do with, I know if you leave, there's this big devil out here waiting for you, and you're not going to be prepared for that fight. You're not going to be prepared because he doesn't play fair. And so I'm like, no, I need you here so that I know you're safe. And so I'll be honest, there probably is some trauma that is attached to that, right? There is trauma that is attached to that, but it's out of love that I'm trying to pull you in. And so in hearing that, what else? How do we fix this? Because I get it. I'm pulling you in, telling you to shut the door, close the ark, we're going this way, and you're like, yeah, but my teacher says I got to do this, and this person got to do this, and this, and then I let you go out, and you never come back in. Or you go somewhere else. So you say, well, I go here now, and I do this now, and so and then we have to kind of, I don't want to say pick up the pieces, but it's not easy out there as you all think it will be. So how, with understanding that, I'm just going to represent, how do we balance that?
I think that what kind of goes back to, like, the ministry question, now I'm just thinking of it, something that would be good, maybe like having someone as an accountability partner, like either someone that's younger, like Hannah's age or my age, partnering with someone who's older in the church, has more experience, has lived life, like actually calling them weekly, saying, hey, you said you were going to be in church. Where are you? Because that way it's like, well, I asked you to hold me accountable. Now I want you to hold me accountable. I'm praying for you. How's your week going? Anything like that, like an actual like thing where people can sign up and say, I would like to mentor a young person in the church and hold them accountable, and even vice versa. I think that having someone to hold you accountable would help a lot, and having people that are willing to do that, because that, I think that would help me a lot, and I would love that, you know?
Sure. All right, so we've really talked about kind of this balance. Here's kind of, I want to dig a little deeper on that one, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers, and then we'll have some final questions. But some young adults feel anxiety as they transition from school to a full-time job and want to take responsibility, and not only like the things of like tithe and offering and all those kind of things, like the money thing, but also I want to be a part of what the ministry is doing. I want to be a part of what my church is doing. I want to be a part of what the school is doing. So the question is, why does this stress that comes with that, the overwhelming feeling, why does this stress that comes with that, what is the stress that comes with that, wanting to be a part of everything that's going on, and how do you deal with that? Am I assuming that it sounded like you said it was stressful, that at times it can feel overwhelming? How do you deal with it?
I guess I'll go again. So for me, when, like, let's use tithe as an example, our whole lives we were taught like 10% of your income and then, you know, give offering. And growing up, I always just tithed because it was what I was told to do. And then as I got older, I kind of realized, like, wait, this thing is kind of working. Like, I'm tithing, but the Lord's giving it back. And sometimes it would be kind of hard because I'm just a kid. And so when I'd get a paycheck, I'd be like, man, this is a lot of money. But then I'm like, why am I withholding that from God, though? And so I think just kind of making it clear to the youth, like, this is what it says about tithing. This is what it says about offering. And, you know, don't be stingy with your money kind of thing. I think once you just give it to God, like, the stress kind of goes away because you know he's going to take care of it.
So let me ask this. Why don't more people give it, why don't more youth give it to God then? Because you could argue then, right, in this church, we've learned about offering. We've learned about tithe. We know that how it works and all of those things. And so why don't we do it? Why do we allow the stress to come on instead of the obedience?
I think that for a lot, it can start in the household, because a lot of people say that the home is, you know, it's your first church, it's your first ministry. And so for me growing up, I had a lot of questions, and my parents were always open to answering all of them. And so because I knew that they appreciated my curiosity and they, you know, they answered the questions that they had to the best of their ability, I grew up asking questions about God that maybe other youth didn't, because maybe in certain households you ask a question and maybe your parent is a leader and they chastise you and they're like, we do this because pastor says so, or we do this because the church says so. And so I think when you foster that that religiosity over that religion, it becomes fear instead of obedience. And so I remember when I was like maybe like 4 or 5, I saw my mom like having communion, and I was like, Mom, can I have some? Like, that looks kind of good. And she goes, do you know what communion is? And I was like, no, but can I have some? And she goes, well, go ask your dad. And then so I went to my dad and I said, Dad, what is communion? And as people are getting up, he's like, this is communion. This is why we do it. This is the story. And after that, he was like, now you can have communion because you understand. And so I grew up with that curiosity, and I grew up with my questions being answered. And so now I have a desire to tithe, and I have a desire to come to church, and I have a desire to be in ministry because my questions were answered.
I love that. I like the idea that the question isn't disrespectful. The question is curiosity, that you're just looking for answers for yourselves and to arm you when you go out to, whether it be school or the 5,000 or something like that. And so definitely want to continue to encourage you all to do that. All right. All right. Let's go to Q&A.
All right. I'm going to filter this one. It says, how does a young person know when to say no if an assignment sounds good, but it's not God? I can repeat it if you need. Okay, gotcha. How does a young person know when to say no if an assignment sounds good, but it's not God?
I think a very easy answer would say to just pray about it.
Oh,
But it's not. It's
She been
not,
in church. She been in church, boy. She know how to.
But there are going to be like opportunities presented to you, and I like how whoever asked this question. Thank you for asking. But it sounds like they have that kind of discernment to know, like, this isn't of God or this isn't what I should be doing. So it's how do they have the confidence to say no and the reassurance to know that God is doing something bigger on the other side. And so it's that like faith that's really going to get you there.
And the thing that let's give her a hand on that. The thing that is challenging with that question is, again, remember, we're talking about defeating the enemies at the gate. As adults, we find it hard to say no. And so it's hard for us to teach you something that we haven't learned ourselves, right? And so I think, the opportunity to have those conversations with a mentor or with a family member or with someone that you are really close to. I've talked to the youth about this before. The concept of maturity is not making more statements. It's asking more questions. And if you can ask more questions as to, well, why are you asking me to do this? What do you see in me? What is it that, now here's some other things, and then speak to other people, right, about that. I think, like what you were saying, is really good. Is really good. All right, Natalia, we got another one?
Yes, sir. What's one giant that's challenged your identity or confidence this year?
What's one giant? Can you read it one more time?
What's one giant that's challenged your identity or confidence this year?
Yeah, one thing that I've had to step back and look at within myself is that I can be pretty egotistical sometimes. Yeah, I know. But stepping outside of myself and right, again, going back to the beginning and looking at the fruit of the mentors in my life and those who are leading me through life and in my walk, and trusting that I don't always have the right answer and I don't always know what's best. And then even going back to the first question of knowing whether something is of God or not, something else that I'm learning is that when you run to Scripture, right, and you learn the things that have been set in place by the Lord to get you closer to Him and sow that within yourself, that your heart will start to align with the things of the Lord, and your posture will help you move through those things.
That's good. Can you answer one more time? The same question, because we want to get some more answers.
Yes, sir. What's one giant that's challenged your identity or confidence this year?
All right. So, many of you know I started college this year for the first time. Oh, well, for the first time, yes. No. I'm not saying it to brag. I'm just going through life. And I'm at UT Austin. And so when you say that name, immediately a lot of people are like, ooh, ooh, UT Austin, hook 'em. And they're like, wow, that's a fancy school. And they automatically think I'm a brainiac. And I'm like, what? No. I think a big thing that challenged my confidence this year was just feeling good enough, because I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people and a lot of people who have their lives together. And they're doing internships and they're already set to have a full-time job. And so like moving to Austin, coming from like a small community, like such a tight-knit community at Hybrid, and then coming, from New Life and leaving that bubble and going to such a big place where there are a million different ideas on things made me feel like, wow, I'm the odd one out. Like, I'm not like these people. A lot of people don't have the kind of faith that I have. If I met other Christians, I felt like they weren't as like firm in their belief as I was, and I felt like that made me feel like the weird one. And so I just think, talking to my parents during the year helped a lot, and coming back to church, I would understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I would understand, like, I'm a Christian because of this. I believe in God. Like, this is what I'm sorry, I'm, like, not explaining this right. But, yeah. Yes. My confidence in who I was challenged a lot this year, but I'm glad to say that, like, I came out of the year the same person that I was when I went in. And I still have my belief in God, and I'm really glad, because I was really scared that I would like get a bunch of people saying, why are you a Christian? And that didn't really happen. I just had to stay firm in who I was, and I learned that.
I think going into like that expectation, just general societal expectation about what you're gonna do next and what you're doing now, and like that pressure really got to me, and like I'm still feel like I'm like recovering from that, because of a lot of the pressure of like, well, you got to get these grades, or you got to do this and you got to do that, and you got to be like these people because they're good but not like these people, but you got to steal that. Like, there's so much pressure that I'm still working through, but definitely the pressure of like society expectations and having that like be in your ear all the time. For me, I had to take a step back and really focus on like, okay, what am I filtering through? Like, because scrolling on TikTok for hours and Instagram for hours, you start to get this societal expectation of who you're supposed to be when that's not like who you're supposed to be. And so really trying to remind myself of who I am and whose I am, to really help shape my identity.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. We got time for one more question.
All right. How do you protect yourself from social media and outside pressures, considering this is how youth mainly stay connected now? And how can leaders support your mental health in ministry? I can repeat it for y'all. So how do you protect yourself from social media and outside pressures, considering this is how youth mainly stay connected now? And how can leaders support your mental health in ministry?
So TikTok is, they have a For You page. It's literally for you. So based on like what you like, the comments you like the videos you like, it then like generates and filters exactly what like you need to see or you want to see. So I would say, like, first of all, delete it. Offload it for that season, that period of time in your life, but also like look at what you're liking and what you're viewing and who you're following, because if you're there to stay connected with other people, you can unfollow other people. You can unlike something. So really trying to cultivate the social media to the purpose of what you're trying to get to, which is connecting and staying up to date with others. And if you feel like you can't do that, then there's an offload feature in your iPhone where it like just removes it temporarily. It saves all your data. So you keep that. But yes, that's what I would recommend.
I would say, I would say being aware of what you can and can't handle. In high school, I had Snapchat, and when I graduated, I deleted it. And it's the only social media I've ever had, and I haven't had social media since then because I realized, and I had to do a lot of self-examination, but I just realized it just wasn't a battle that I was willing to fight. I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle the stress. I couldn't handle the pressures. And so I think, the Bible says to not try to fight sin, to flee from it. And the things that it was tempting me with, I just knew I wasn't strong enough to fight it, so I just fled from it. A lot of times we get to that Goliath and we're like, I can do this, and then you get smushed and you're like, I can't do this. And it's okay to walk away. It's okay to say that, for this season, I'm not strong enough, for however long, I just can't do it. And with those societal pressures, you just have to be honest with yourself about what you can and can't handle. I would say about seeking mentorship, I know that in high school, when I was facing those anxieties, I went to Elder Jackson. He's our Bible teacher. And so I think just finding someone that you can talk to who's going to be honest with you is also really important.
No. I think tonight we have heard a lot surrounding communication and allowing yourself to be curious, but wanting to be heard and understood and having that open door for that. And I think I want to first appreciate each and every one of you, because I know this is not an easy thing that you're doing. It's not an easy thing that you're doing. Like, you have yourself you're representing, you're also representing your families, you're also representing your friends, and then you're representing your pastors who you love and all these. And so I know that there are probably people that are like, I would never do that. But you all, for the vision of what you want to happen in the ministry, to build the bridge, to break down the barriers. You kind of was our Nakshans, right? You are the Nakshans that stepped in and said, okay, I don't know what's gonna come from this, but let's do it and see how, and the questions and the situations and all of that. And so I want to personally, and we want to thank you as a church family for stepping out and doing this. So can we all stand to give them a hand? Oh, they got the music too? We got the music, everything? And then I would be completely remiss if I didn't express, and I don't, like, if I say something, I mean it. Whether it's right or wrong, I meant it, and now I have to ask for forgiveness later. But, ask my wife. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that these two people here, and I'm talking about pastor and co-pastor, support the youth unwaveringly. Like, they just really, what is it that they need? What is it that they're probably light years ahead of everything that we're talking about, but they're like, make space for them. And there are so many places, smaller ministries, same size, bigger ministries, that would never make space for the children. And I mean, young adults, younger people. And so I want to, if you all can stand, and let's clap give them a hand. And appreciate them. We love you all. Where God is taking us is based on you and your continual walk in favor, but also your ability to allow us to kind of do things like this so that we can build the bridges and get over those barriers. And so, listen, I'm gonna stop there, but because they're doing I don't know, it's kind of, the music is like, okay, break out the Bibles and go to. Anyway,